Hello, fellow classmates and Dr. Sanchez. This is my Performance Management System graduate presentation. The way organizations do business today has changed dramatically over the years. Organizations have invested millions of dollars to stay competitive in this sphere of globalization. Performance management is one of the areas that organizations are constantly redefining to strategically maintain and recruit human capital. Graduate project objectives. The objective of this graduate project is to develop and design an effective team performance management system for a company of today. Starbucks is the company selected to be used in this graduate project presentation and will be supported by a robust literature selection and documentation. The performance management system developed for this project will address the process, contextual factors, and technological factors of a developed performance management system, as well as address any deficiencies of the performance management system and provide solutions. Expectations. Expectations are to define and discuss performance management system appraisal reviews, identify the six components of performance management and their roles, identify human resource role in performance management appraisal reviews, identify different methods used in appraisal reviews in the performance management system, and finally, a question and answer section. History of Starbucks. Starbucks first opened in 1971 as a single store in the historic Pike Place Market in Seattle, Washington. In 1981, Howard Schultz had his first visit to a Starbucks store. From his first cup of Sumatra, Howard was drawn into Starbucks. Howard Schultz began working for Starbucks as its vice president of marketing in 1982. While on a business trip to Italy and at a coffee bar, he observed the relationship the coffee experience can have. Upon returning from his trip, Mr. Schultz convinced Starbucks owners to allow him to open a coffee kiosk. This kiosk eventually grew to 3 kiosks. Although coffee kiosk was popular, owners did not want to expand the concept. Mr. Schultz left Starbucks in 1985. Schultz goes back to Starbucks with $3.8 million to buy the company, and he became the owner of Starbucks in 1987. Howard Schultz leaves Starbucks in 2017. In 2018, Starbucks hits a crisis when two African American men in Philadelphia were arrested for simply waiting on a business acquaintance and was asked to leave when declined to buy anything. Police was called and the wrongful arrest of the men sparked nationwide protests. During the same year, Starbucks closes stores across the nation for diversity training of employees because of the incident involving the two African American men. Mission, values, and goals. Starbucks' mission is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. The values and visions of Starbucks. With our partners, our coffee, and our customers at our core, we live these values, creating a culture of warmth and belonging where everyone is welcome, acting with courage, challenging the status quo, and finding new ways to grow our company and each other, being present, connecting with transparency, dignity, and respect, delivering our very best in all we do, holding ourselves accountable for results. We are performance driven through the lens of humanity. Starbucks strategic plan and goals. In 2018, new CEO of Starbucks, Kevin Johnson, unveils the company's strategic goals and plan. The plan involves increased growth in revenue, social responsibility, expanding digital relationships, pay equity, and building a strong pipeline of talent. The student notes that performance management systems start with an assessment of an organization's mission, vision, values, goals, and strategy. Strategic plan and goals. If you would place your attention to the right side of the presentation slide, I have listed out Starbucks' strategic plan and goals. The first one is to increase growth and revenue, social responsibility and impact, expanding digital relationships, pay equity, and building strong pipeline of talent. In 2018, Starbucks Corporation hosted its 26th annual meeting of shareholders with more than 3,500 shareholders, partners who are also employees, invited guests, and board members were in attendance. CEO Kevin Johnson talks of the growth over the previous 5 years and how that growth is propelling the organization for more added growth and increased revenue, specifically in China. The number of stores in China has grown from 800 to 3,200 in the past 5 years, with an average of one new store opening every 15 hours. Customers and partners connect with Starbucks in unprecedented ways in China. Starbucks remains on track to open more than 5,000 stores in China by 2021. This is directly in line with Starbucks' strategic plan and goal of increased growth and revenue. For Starbucks, the power of the brand is fueled by both an elevated customer experience and relentless efforts to create a meaningful impact in the communities it serves. Starbucks announced its plans to create a greener cup. Most of the Starbucks stores are green and some are being renovated to follow the green standard. Starbucks is committed to reducing its environmental footprint across the globe. This includes energy, water efficiency, and waste reduction. This is directly in line with Starbucks' strategic plans and goals of social responsibility and impact. Expanding the digital relationship. Plans of reaching more than 60 million current U.S. customers per month who are not yet members of Starbucks Rewards. This includes opening the Starbucks app to non-Starbucks Reward customers for later. Starbucks has a series of campaigns to increase digital relationships, thereby increasing revenue with the pay and go capabilities of the Starbucks app. This is directly in line with Starbucks' strategic plans and goals of increased growth in revenue as well as expanding digital relationships. Starbucks has made great strides in pay equity and plans to continue to do more. Starbucks has also formulated pay equity principles that led to the successful closure of the pay gap of 100% at Starbucks in the United States. Starbucks is sharing these principles so other companies can follow suit and address known systemic barriers of global pay equity. Not only did they close the pay gap between men and women, but Starbucks also closed the pay gap in between minorities. It did not give any information about the percentage or by how much, but Starbucks is directly in line with their strategic plan and goals of pay equity. Starbucks builds its pipeline of talent through Opportunity Youth. After its commitment to hire 100,000 Opportunity Youth, that is 1 in 8 Americans ages 16 to 24 who aren't in school or working, Starbucks announced today it has reached 50,000 hires and is on track to meet its goal by 2020. Opportunity Youth partners are on average staying with the company longer, receiving promotions, and signing up for the Starbucks College Achievement. This is directly in line with Starbucks' strategic plan and goals of building strong pipeline of talent. Risk and uncertainties. Risk and uncertainties for Starbucks can occur through their product, location, technology, legal issues, or employee relations. Risk and uncertainties through Starbucks products. Starbucks may have risk and uncertainties in the area of fluctuations in U.S. and internal economies and currencies, the impact of competition, the acceptance of Starbucks products by customers, coffee, dairy, and other raw material prices and availability, Starbucks' ability to preserve, grow, and leverage their brands, potential negative effects of incidents involving food or beverage-borne illnesses, tampering, adulteration, which is a legal term meaning that a food product fails to meet the legal standards, contamination, or mislabeling. Risk and uncertainties can occur for Starbucks through location. Risk and uncertainties through costs associated with the Starbucks Company initiative and plans to purchase complete ownership of stores in China. Risk and uncertainties can happen in location with the plans to continue to grow in China, in East China. Risk and uncertainties through technology can have potential negative effects of material breaches of Starbucks organization information technology systems to the extent where they actually experience a material breach. Starbucks material failures of their information technology system and costs associated with those failures. Risks and uncertainties continue. Risk and uncertainties for Starbucks can occur through legal issues involving legal proceedings for the Starbucks organization, legal effects of U.S. tax cuts for the Starbucks organization, legal effects of the Jobs Act for the Starbucks organization. The Jobs Act is a jumpstart of our Business Startups Act. It was an act that was first introduced by former President Barack Obama in 2012. It's intended to encourage funding of small businesses in the United States by easing many of the country's security regulations. Risk and uncertainties can happen or occur for the Starbucks organization through employees' relations. Starbucks has a good performance management system, but an unfortunate interaction caused the organization to be reactive and look at its practices. Mr. Schultz made a business strategy to make Starbucks an organization committed based on respect and equality among employees. Former CEO Howard Schultz was quoted as saying, "If people relate to the company they work for, if they form an emotional tie to it and buy into its dreams, they will pour their heart into making it better." As I mentioned before earlier in the presentation, in 2018, the arrest of two black men, Dante Robinson and Rashawn Nelson, at Starbucks in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in 2018, sparked protests of Starbucks across the nation. This unfortunate interaction prompted the organization to look at their practices. The plan to improve pay equity. The plan was to hire more minorities as baristas as well as corporate, and to hire those with disabilities, which seems to be non-existent in the Starbucks organization. By fulfilling these deficiencies, it will no doubt help with state and federal laws that govern fair practices of hiring, compensation, insurance coverage, and etc. If you would place your attention to the right of the screen, student has noted the diversity makeup of the Starbucks organization. 16% of Starbucks executives are people of color. Of Starbucks' 19 executives, only 3 are people of color. At the time that this data was given, CEO Howard Schultz, who is white, reportedly made about $20 million a year in total compensation, which includes salary, bonuses, stock options, and more. 40% of Starbucks workers are people of color. Some 80,000 of Starbucks' 200,000 workers are people of color. According to a barista self-reporting, they make an average of $20,000 a year, including tips. That's roughly $10 an hour. Starbucks financial status. The financial highlights of Starbucks. Total revenue increased 10% to $24.7 billion in fiscal 2018 compared to $22.47 billion in fiscal 2017. Global comparable store sales grew 2%, driven by a 3% increase in average ticket. Consolidated operating income decreased to $3.9 billion in fiscal 2018 compared to operating income of $4.1 billion in fiscal 2017. Fiscal 2018 operating margin was 15.7% compared to 18.5% in fiscal 2017. Operating margin compression in fiscal 2018 was primarily driven by food and beverage related mix shifts, largely in the American segment. The impact of ownership change in East China at the end of the first quarter of fiscal 2018, higher restructuring and impairment costs, and higher salaries and benefits related to digital platforms, technology, infrastructure, and innovation. Restructuring and impairment charges increased to $224 million in fiscal 2018 compared to $154 million in fiscal 2017. Increased costs were primarily related to higher asset impairments associated with the decision to close certain Starbucks company-operated stores in the U.S. and Canada, higher goodwill impairment charges related to the Switzerland retail reporting unit, and restructuring costs. Earnings per share for fiscal 2018 increased to $3.24 compared to the earnings per share of $1.97 in fiscal 2017. The increase was primarily driven by the gains from the acquisition of the East China joint venture and the sale of the Tazo brand. Additionally, the net favorable impact from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act also contributed to the increase. Cash flows from operations were $11.9 billion in fiscal 2018 compared to $4.3 billion in fiscal 2017. This change was primarily due to the receipt of the upfront payment from Nestle related to the Global Coffee Alliance. Capital expenditures were $2.0 billion in fiscal 2018 compared to $1.5 billion in fiscal 2017. We returned $8.9 billion to our shareholders in fiscal 2018 through share repurchases and dividends compared to $3.5 billion in fiscal 2017. So as you can see, Starbucks has a very sound financial status. They are continuing to be aggressive in East China and China, and therefore they closed some of the stores in America. But overall, their financial status is very good. Performance management. What is performance management? The student has noted several different definitions of performance management. Performance management is continuous process of identifying, measuring, and developing the performance of individuals and teams, and aligning performance with the strategic goals of the organization. The U.S. Office of Personnel Management defines performance management to include 1. Planning work and setting expectations. 2. Continually monitoring performance. 3. Developing the capacity to perform. And 4. Periodically rating performance in a summary fashion and rewarding a good performance. Performance management is a broad concept and it embodies both performance evaluation and the design of jobs, teams, departments, and divisions in such a way that they are all pursuing interlocking goals and strategies. Performance management is an ongoing process of development and learning. The student believes that Starbucks has a good performance management system. However, improvement can be made in the areas to address behaviors of employees, particularly baristas and frontline employees, and provide a feedback and review component to help employees stay in line with organizational goals. Performance management process. In this part of the presentation, the student has noted a 6-step performance management process. The first step is organizational goals. Organizational goals are set by the leaders of the organization. And leaders are noted to be the executive leaders of the organization. The next step in this performance management process that has been noted is department goals. These goals are set by departmental leaders and usually follows organizational goals. Organizational goals again are set by the executive leaders of the organization. Employee goals. In this step, the employee provides input to what is expected of their performance. Also in this step includes collaboration between the employee and manager. The next step is evaluating performance. In this step, the manager usually rates the performance of the employee as well as gathering other information from other sources. This other sources can include your coworkers and or teams that you may be involved with working with. Review and feedback session. In this step, this usually involves the manager and employee holding a formal review and feedback session. This step also includes a face-to-face meeting between the manager and employee. The last step in this performance management process is HR input. This is where HR decisions are made. HR decisions are pay, promotions, training, termination, and possible layoffs, as well as legal issues. Recruiting and training for the Starbucks organization. Recruiting and career opportunities that are noted for the Starbucks organization. Starbucks is actively looking for people who have excellent communication skills and like helping people. Starbucks recruitment seems to be very selective. They desire high performers and they go through a rigorous process to recruit. Starbucks recruitment process in a glimpse is as followed. Once the recruitment process has produced qualified job applicants, the selection process is used to determine which applicant has the best chance of performing well on the job. Selection procedure include 1. Application forms and resumes. 2. References and background checks. 3. Selection test. And 4. Interviews. Starbucks does not document if there is a different recruiting process for special needs applicants. Starbucks has two different types of recruiting ways. There are two types of recruitment: internal recruitment and external recruitment. In internal recruitment is the recruitment process for people who are already in the company, while external recruitment is recruitment of people from outside the company. Once the recruitment process has produced qualified job applicants, the selection process is used to determine which applicants have the best chance of performing well on the job. Selection procedures include 1. Application forms and resumes, references and backgrounds check, selections test, and interviews. Starbucks training. Starbucks training is dependent upon what position a person has in the company, such as a barista, if it's full or part-time, and or if you're training to become a manager. Training is simply states, for example, the position of the barista is only for a week or so. You'll get more time if needed. The new hire is then tested on what was learned in training and then is placed in the store for real-time training. There are no special certifications for baristas that are outlined in Starbucks training document. Starbucks also fails to mention the training one may receive if hired as a manager or advancing towards a manager's position. Performance appraisals. What is performance appraisals? The student notes that performance appraisal is sometimes advocated as part of a performance management system. In particular, the performance appraisal is number one, formal and regular. In most organizations, performance appraisals happen every year and is likely tied to the process of salary administration and often part of a supervisor's job to evaluate their subordinates. Number two is summative. It provides information about performance that has happened over a period of time, most likely over a year. Number three is evaluative. Performance appraisals goes beyond descriptions to provide evaluations of the level of performance. 4. Performance appraisals provides potentially detailed feedback. Appraisal systems will provide numerical measure of several aspects of dimensions of performance as well as assessment of overall performance levels. Number 6, performance appraisal as part of a performance management system. Number 5, has potential consequences for other human resource decisions. Has potential consequences for HR decisions that are mainly about salary, promotions, terminations, and layoffs. In this part of the presentation, the student has noted a performance review step process. This performance review step process has 4 steps. The first step is conveying standards and articulating expectations. Performance appraisals work best when there is clarity and agreement about what an employee is expected to do and what represents good, average, and poor performance. Number 2, collecting information about performance. Supervisors or managers who are responsible for evaluating an employee's performance are likely to use a number of methods to collect relevant information, such as observing and feedback from peers. Number 3 in the noted performance review step process is evaluating performance. Performance appraisal usually involves making judgments about performance that is determining whether performance meets or exceeds expectations. It is more common for supervisors and managers to consider a range of judgment about whether or not expectations have been met. Number 4, providing feedback and opportunities for comment and review. Most appraisals are face-to-face meetings between the supervisor and the person being evaluated. This will include the supervisor evaluation about performance and feedback about the factors that led to evaluations and steps the employee can take to maintain improved performance levels. This may involve planning for next year's performance goals. Why performance reviews? Performance evaluation is important because it is a key tool for improving the performance of individuals, teams, departments, divisions, and organizations, and for ensuring that all levels of the organization are working towards the same end. Student believes that in the performance review process, Starbucks can improve by administering the review perhaps quarterly, which may provide more communication on making sure the individuals and teams are working towards the goals of the organization. Doing the performance review before the year ends may give the chance for improvements to be made sooner rather than later. Performance and measure of performance. Performance defined. Performance in relation to performance appraisal typically prefer to define job performance in terms of behaviors. That is, job performance is something a person does. Starbucks allows customers to objectively measure an employee by providing a customer comment card and survey questions answered by Starbucks customers about their thoughts on both Starbucks employees and services, as well as their products. This is a good way to measure the employee's job performance because it is a very objective way. Objective measure of performance includes production output, scrap rates, and time to complete a task. Several things that an employee may be observed doing by a customer. Starbucks does not appear to have a subjective way to measure performance, although managers and retail employees, baristas, and cashiers are also measuring each other's performance simply by doing an observation of how their workmates are doing at work. Subjective measure of performance is described as subjective if some judgment is required to assign a grade or numeric value to the thing that is being measured. Student notes that Starbucks does not appear to have a formal performance appraisal document. In this part of the presentation, this is a review of Starbucks' performance appraisal process and or methods. There are two stages to do a performance appraisal. First is to measure the job performance. Second is to share the feedback with the employees. Starbucks, as I've noted in previous part of this presentation, uses something called the customer comment card as a way to measure the job performance of their employees. The customer comment card is a series of survey questions answered by Starbucks customers about their thoughts on both Starbucks employees and services, as well as their products. Starbucks states this is a good way to measure the employee's job performance. Managers and retail employees, such as the baristas and cashiers, are also measuring each other's performance simply by doing an observation of how their workmates are doing at work. After doing so, the company must provide a feedback, training if needed, and it assigns rewards to their workers. The feedback given is a 360-degree feedback. A 360-degree feedback means that both lower-level managers, baristas and cashiers, and middle-level managers or store manager gives feedback to each other. This is the way that Starbucks conducts its performance appraisal. This is the process and some of the methods that are used. Starbucks performance appraisal design and components. In the performance appraisal, as I've stated before, you have your 360 review, training if required, and possible reward for the employees. Recommendations for performance appraisal reviews in the Starbucks organization. In this part of the presentation, the student has noted several components of the performance appraisal review in the Starbucks organization. And as previously stated, student believes that Starbucks has a good performance appraisal management system. And in this part of the presentation, the student also notes their recommendation for the performance appraisal review. And the student's recommendation is boldened for easy reference. But once again, the student would like to review Starbucks organization performance appraisal review. The first two are feedback and review. As the student has previously stated, Starbucks uses the 360 model of review and feedback. The development part of the performance appraisal review in the Starbucks organization is something that the student recommends. In this part of the performance appraisal review, the manager and employee organizes a plan to help enhance employees' skills and acquire new knowledge and skills. Yes, an employee is trained during the recruitment and training phase of being part of the Starbucks organization, but the Starbucks organization really does not have a detailed or outlined plan for people to be developed. For example, going from a barista to a manager, or going from a manager to a district manager. There are no steps in place for employees to be developed to be used in higher positions in the organization. Reward and recognition. Starbucks has a reward program, but it does not detail or outline what or how that reward works or recognition. They don't have a recognition program to recognize employees when they do outstanding job or outstanding service or help customers in an outstanding way. Collaboration. Starbucks has collaboration for employees to continue to hold each other accountable for their service. This collaboration and accountability is seen in the way that they observe each other working on a day-to-day basis. This can be seen in just observing job performance, objectively observing job performance. And remember, the student noted job performance is, or performance, or the measure of performance is just how a person or an employee does their job. And so this part of the performance appraisal is recommended by the student as well. They need to, Starbucks, has a collaboration part where employees continue to hold each other accountable for their service and for how they do their job. The last one is goal settings. Goal settings is a shared responsibility between a manager and employee that builds commitment and ownership and effective communication of expectations. Goal setting is another part of the appraisal review that the student recommends because it is not seen in the Starbucks organization. Goal settings is something that an employee can do, not only to help them be more committed to the type of work they do, but it can also help them be ready to advance in an organization. So my recommendation for performance appraisal reviews in the Starbucks organization would be development and goal settings. Those two are the things that needs to be added to the appraisal review form, and as well as a well documented performance review document. I have hoped that you have enjoyed this presentation, and at this time I am open for questions. Thank you and have a good evening. Hello again. I am sorry I ended my presentation a little too soon. In conclusion, the student information presented agrees that Starbucks has a good performance management system. Student provided a recommendation that perhaps could be added to the performance appraisal review process in the Starbucks performance management system. At this time, the student is open for any questions that you may have. Again, thank you, and I hope you have enjoyed this presentation and have a good evening.